But we do have very, very special guests for everyone listening and watching today. We've been trying to figure it out for a couple weeks now, but we ended up meeting up. We're in Austin, Texas. Just happened to work out perfect.
Yeah.
But anyways, thanks for tuning in for another episode. A couple of subs. I'm your host, Cody Crane. With me as always, my lovely co-host, Kristen Crane, aka Kiki.
What's up, guys? Thanks for tuning in to another episode. So, like Cody said, our guest today is a very, very special guy that we've recently gotten to know pretty well, decently well, over a few beers, me at least, over a few beers.
I'm excited about this.
So, welcome to the show, Mr. Leo Banjo.
Oh, when I say Leo, you say Banjo.
You guys are right. Thank you for having me.
Heck yeah, I'm glad that it worked out.
Thanks for carving us into your schedule. I notice you're on the road all the time. It's just 100 miles an hour always, it seems like. But thank you for being on here with us, man.
Hey, road life is tough. It makes family hard. It makes the things that you enjoy outside of work hard, but you gotta make time for it.
That's right.
And so things that are important and things that mean something to you, make time for them. This is one of those things. So glad to be here.
Oh man, thank you.
So speaking of that, so before we really dive into like the business aspect, talk about, tell our listeners a little bit about your background, your family, where you came from, your wife. I know that you were telling us all this interesting stuff at Twin Peaks the other day. So.
I saw the picture of the two kids. They're adorable.
Oh yes.
They are darling. My wife's name is Kristen as well. And
yep.
Really?
The thing I always say is Kristen grows and right, which is our children. They are a true delight. If you get me on my wife and my kids, it will be an hour and a half of just talking about how awesome they are.
That's awesome.
Marry up, fellas. That's the trick to it.
Ka-ching.
So Cody knows.
100%.
So in this work, I have a long and sordid tale into doing this work that I do. By training, I grew up in Atlanta, right outside of the city. My parents were small business owners from the time of me being very young. And so they're an immigrant family. And so as such, they have no care for immigrant child labor laws. And so I was working at the register at 7 years old. So that was my big foray into business. By the time I was 11, I was scheduling all the workers for our team, and
wow.
And that was just, I thought that was normal. That's what people did as a 11-year-old growing up. I went through school, got to spend some time in Carolina and Charleston, going to a military school there, the Citadel. It was a wonderful institution of which I'm lucky to represent my class and serve as the class representative currently, so that when we have our reunions and we volunteer to raise funds for the institution, and as well as the initiatives that the school does to remain relevant and to grow leaders that we sorely need here in America. And now I do consulting work. My learning before the MBA was in biology, actually. I'm a science brain.
Yeah.
So I can't help it. But I find that it helps everywhere. And so once you really take on coming to a situation with no prejudice or forethought, observing the truth, and then going where it leads you, then you're able to use that truth to improve something. And so that is how I've come to be a consultant after owning my own businesses for a few years there. Sold a couple of them. It was really fun, but I found that it was actually a crisis I had, because I had a business that was pretty successful, and I thought that making money was going to make me happy. And when I looked at my bank account, with just a bunch of zeros in there on the screen, I didn't feel anything, and I got panicked because I was like, I did the thing that's supposed to make me happy, and I'm super not happy. But I learned that what I enjoyed about business was building it up. It was going from nothing to something. That was the part that really got me excited.
Winning.
Yes,
winning.
Yeah.
I saw something that we could be better here, and we made something, and that was fun. And then the making money part was like, oh, that's okay.
It's
Well,
kind of a byproduct.
yeah,
of
and
winning.
exactly right. And but now we're done with the building, and so it was then I got an affinity for I can do the building part consistently and serve people in that way, and that was where I found a consultancy that really aligns with my values as well, because I don't want to be I just can't abide being a predatory lame-o, consultant, which is the industry. That's people prey on those who don't know enough and say, I can just smoke and mirror, snake oil salesman person.
Yeah.
So it's hard to find a firm that is contrary to that, but I'm blessed to have found one, and so that's what I do now. So
that is awesome, man. I know. So you came into the FL Crane family, guns a blazing, but helped us out down on the Mississippi Gulf Coast in our office down there, and that directly relates with our our operation technology team here in Texas.
That's right.
And like they couldn't be so opposite, but at the same time they can't do anything without each other. And I feel like it's going to be a blessing. I'm anxious to see what you do with the operation technology team down here, but like being there and knowing that, like seeing what they're doing, and then directly coming straight over here to the op team, and like that had to help a little bit. I feel like kind of seeing each side of it and just being like back to back.
It does. Now, it's a really productive question there, Cody, because real insights and real just sort of leaps forward comes from the confluence of different disciplines, right? And so it happens in medicine, and it happens in innovation and technology, when you can have the distinct and different skill sets come together and then really work toward a mutual objective. That's where you get that iterative leap. And so it will be helpful for me to have had the hands-on manufacturing experience with the Gulfport location as we look to get the most out of the technology team here on the front end. So I'm looking forward to it too. They've got a good team here. They're excited. They know that there's opportunity there, and so it's been a good time thus far.
I talked to Jeremy Alvis, who kind of heads up our tech team down here. Talked to him this morning, and boy, did I open up a can of worms.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. I sat down. Somebody had brought biscuits in this morning, and sat down in there, and he walked in. And I was like, "So, have you and Leo Banjo, have y'all like dove into it and really got to the nitty gritty yet?" And he's like, "No, but I'm really excited about this, Cody." And we sat there for probably an hour talking today.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good. Well, good.
He is super excited.
He's a good partner. He's because it's a difficult thing to have someone from the outside come in and even with the best of intentions say I'm here to help, and because there's a lot of ego there, because we just can't help but be who we are and be.
We're all alphas,
Yeah, I mean we're here.
That's why we're here. That's why we're
And you're part of building something, and you gotta be proud of what you built, but at the same time know that it's not yet complete. There's more to be done.
Always.
And the best of partners are ones who are confident that we can do more than we're doing now, yet have the teachable spirit, a person who is prepared to take on good counsel and act upon it. And Jeremy's one of those people, so I for sure, and we've had a good week thus far.
I'm excited to have him on our team too. And Kristen, you could probably ask this question better than I could, but that really kind of struck a nerve. Not struck a nerve, but made me think about something. But so, Josh, your wingman.
No,
buddy.
I might be his wingman. He's but yes, we're my cohort.
So I talked to Josh recently, like just right before we came over tonight, and I asked him, I was like, what do I really need to dive in with Leo on? Like, I know there's a lot in there, but where do I need to aim at, and so he was telling me kind of your specialties, like coming into a company and realizing, like, how do we better utilize the tools we already have, technology wise, and kind of full scale. It was a quick conversation, but how do we better utilize this, and then once we get to that point, how do we build on that? But Chris and I had talked about that earlier, and I kind of came up with like, I don't know enough about technology to really ask this question.
Well, it's just like, so for those of you who don't know, we interviewed him in season 3, and Josh and Leo are co-workers and with Cogent Analytics. And anyway, so Josh was telling us to ask you about the whole like tech side, and about how instead of like going and trying to sell or pitch whatever, that you take what the company already has and just kind of, transforms that, build with what you have and make that better.
That's your, first of all, not fair to call him Josh.
Gotcha.
Because that is, he's got inside information on me. But I gotta tell you where it comes from. So my wife, Kristen, and I, we're both one generation removed from farmers. Both of our grandparents were working land. Hers in North Carolina, and her aunt, who began in raising her at 90 years old, still on a tractor mowing her lawn.
Wow, that's crazy.
And so they're like 90 years old, that Depression era sort of mentality. You got to work with what you got and make it work. And it's sort of what drives me. So it's technology, but it comes from a very non-tech, salt of the earth place. And so so the other thing is, and I'm working on my anger and response, but it just makes me upset when people think the answer is just to buy more new stuff and that'll fix everything.
Yeah.
Come on. We have to make it. I fiercely believe to meet you where you are, and then plot a path forward. So when I come to a place, one of the first things I do is to take stock fully of what they have. And it's always underutilized, not to their own fault, because people have a job to do. I'm trying to get this product or this service or this out of the door as fast as I can.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so it takes time for them to spend time doing all of that, and less time optimizing the tools that they have. But at the same time, you don't walk into a kitchen and have a bunch of dull knives. It's dangerous, it's unsafe, and you don't get the best results. And so that is the same thing with technology, and the same thing with your systems, because if you want a repeatable result, the same high quality or the same consistency and throughput for your product, you got to have a tool set that equips your team to do that. And too often, you have a tool set you build up just good enough for how you are now. Then the company grows, the company scales, we have successes, and suddenly we look around and what we were doing before no longer works. It's harder than it was before. It's more frustrating. I used to be able to do this thing on the back of a napkin, but now I'm having arguments with my coworker more than I used to. Now my profits, is dwindling, and suddenly I don't quite see what's different.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that scaling issue, that scaling challenge that is universal, but to overcome it doesn't start with going out and buying a new Cadillac of IT. It comes with taking what you got and using it in a way that really meets the needs you have now in your new state.
Well, how do you kind of walk me through that? Because what if you do need certain, new technology in
Kind of like
order
the digging in part.
Yeah, whenever you dig into that, using what you got or whatever and better in that, how do you do that with the tech side of things when, it changes every single day and there's always something new and greater out there? And anyway, how do you do that?
There is, and so, and it's tough with tech. You want to be the new shiniest, machine learning, and you've got your algorithms that sort of do things for you, and it's amazing, and that's out there. But algorithms and machine learning is only as good as its input, and so you got to start there. Because too often too often we don't think about what we want out of the system when we design our inputs. And so when you get there, like, oh, now I want to see my these outputs, these reports or these key measures, but I can't get them because I didn't think about that before when I was designing the system. So now I gotta go back to the basics and
It's like a building, you gotta have a good foundation.
That's exactly right. It's exactly right. And so that's where I start. So I go in there and I'm like, what do we need to measure right now to know if we're doing well, to know if we're winning? Because we can't wait for financials. We can't wait for the end of the quarter or the end of the fiscal year to know if we did okay. That's managing the rearview mirror.
Yeah.
We need to measure things that are leading indicators that will show if we manage these things well, if we aggressively and with attack these key measures, then we know that the money will come. And so then we know that we're doing well by our customer. Then we know that we're doing well by our people internally. Then we know we are living up to our goals as an organization. And so it's got to do that. And so I have done this to where I've literally had 18 screens that are refreshing every 0.3 seconds that are the same thing. And also I've done it to where it's been rocks in a jar. They're the same thing to me. They're not different because both of those solutions met the needs of the clients that they had there. That is the important thing. I'm platform agnostic. What I'm jealous for, my client success. What I will not compromise on is building up a system that supports their needs now and in the future. So that's
something they can build on.
Exactly right. And so most of the time it takes going backwards to go forward.
Right.
But often there is some sort of new school approach to data management or data warehousing or to just how they do the back of the house stuff to ensure that what the work that we do now will serve them in the future. And so that is sort of keeping a foot in the old and the new.
Yeah.
Is kind of how we get that.
So yeah, like not only do you go in and analyze the financials and all the technology and all that kind of stuff, but you do that with the people too. Cody and I were talking about this the other day. You go in and you what's the word I'm looking for? Assess, whatever.
Analyze.
Well, yeah, I know. Oh my God. It's late. It's a lot later than we expect. Anyway, so you go. Well, now I've lost my train of thought. No, I'm kidding. So anyway, you go in and you analyze all the employees and everything, and you find some bad apples. I mean, naturally, every company has some bad apples, and what I was kind of curious about is whenever you come into such a family-oriented company, and you've got employees that have been there for 40 years, or their dad works there, or their grandfather, or something like that. What if you find a bad apple in one of those, but my God, you own a family business and you're friends with them and you drink beer with them and you hang out on the
generation
weekend.
employees.
Yeah, thank you. That's the word. How do you do that? Because how do you let go of something when it's without creating any bad blood between?
That's one thing. I mean, that's from what I've talked to Josh and you about on this. That's just kind of part of it, I guess.
I mean, that's a real dense question, Kristen, and it's let me tease it apart there. It's really insightful in that there's the two main parts there are
Switching gears on it.
When you have people that are underperforming in an organization, we want to say, by golly, it is their fault. Like how dare they underperform? And they're my cousin Ray is just taking advantage of the situation. Right? So
Cousin Ray.
yeah, the first thing is, as business leaders, it is our fault that it happened. This world is so nuanced and complicated that there are very few truths that are universal. There are very few things that are true all the time. They're just the world is too complex for that. But here's one of them: the culture of any organization, without exception, the culture of any organization is defined by the worst behavior you're willing to see and say nothing about it. The worst thing you want to witness and walk away from defines the culture of your organization. It's how companies that are meant to take care of children end up abusing them. It's how organizations meant to feed the needy end up embezzling from them because someone saw something and said nothing.
Nothing. Yep. I agree.
Culture. Innovation just find the worst behavior you want to see, say nothing about it. And so, that being true, it's the onus is on the leadership to define that culture. And Cousin Ray Ray is doing that because you gave your approval to him.
You allowed him to do that.
You stamped it on there. You said that's good to me. I said nothing. And so, take ownership of that. That is the reality. Because in a different culture, you might behave differently. We're all adults and we hang out. But if you're in, if you're at the high school reunion versus being at the pew on Sunday, you act differently. Not because you're a different person, but because the environment in which you are, shapes your behavior. It shapes how you are.
So, in that, I guess I kind of just had a thought. I was like, if I don't know how to word this, I'm terrible at that.
We're tripping up on our words a lot tonight.
Just do it. Just ask me. I'm open. I'm an
That's a
open
cute
book.
shirt though.
Thank you, babe.
It is nice. Looks good on you.
I'm gonna come back to that one
Okay.
actually. Be honest with you, I'm gonna come back to that one.
Come back to that one because I have a part 2 to go to. And so
Let's go.
The second part, of course, is the family aspect, right? How do you have the real conversation with your brother, sister, cousin, that you're going to see at the barbecue later on, in that space. But in this space, we need to have this thing. And what helps that, what makes it possible, is having clearly defining what good looks like. What are our goals? And so I mentioned earlier I went to the Citadel Military College in South Carolina. And so that is a place to where the big thing you learn from there is peer accountability. Like how do you, think about it, a bunch of 18 to 22-year-old men and women who are young men and women who have to uphold a standard when their peers are doing keg stands, right, at a college across the country. And so how do you hold the person accountable who you were still going to, go play guitar with later on or go hang out later on? And that is a thing that is lacking in this world, and why it's relevant, because it shouldn't be a conflict there. Because in this space, we've all agreed on this is what we are aspiring to. We hit it or we don't hit it. If you don't hit it, we're going to help each other get there. If you don't hit it, you don't care you don't hit it, then we're going to talk about why that is.
Yeah.
Now, when I see you down the way, at the watering hole or down the river float, then we can have that too. But it doesn't mean that, as long as as long as it's clear that it's not a personal vendetta or grudge because you rubbed me out of the will or whatever else. It's that this is what we're going for, and we all agree this is what we need to do. Then it becomes clear. But without those clear goals, then it's rife for backbiting and rife for just this really difficult family situation to work through.
So I feel like you're I'm sorry, babe.
No,
your version 2 there answered my question for me. Like I couldn't even put it in words, but you answered that. Is how do you do that and still be friends with them? Like I work with some of my best friends.
Oh yeah.
Like I spend more time with them than I do with my family.
It's a blessing.
But you have to be different at work than you are at the watering hole,
Yeah.
But I mean, you answered it there in your question, or in your version 2 there. But that was perfect, man.
I mean, it's just true, and it doesn't. I'm not one of the people who thinks you have to be, buttoned up, corporate soulless person at work, and then personality comes through at the when you're outside of work. It's just that you can be your truest self while you're doing work that's honoring to your organization, and then on your free time you do your free time, and that's just all there is to it. But in both places you should be aiming towards something good, and the betterment of the community, whether you're volunteering, with your free time, but that is just what it is. But it's when there's no objective measure of good or bad, then people have to fill that space with something, and it's often rumors and scuttlebutt and it leads to hurt feelings.
I mean, if you let a dog go to the bathroom on the floor all the time and you don't ever get onto him, why is he not going to keep going on the floor?
That is yes. That is true. That is
right.
I mean, it's as simple as that.
That's a really simple version. I feel like
people's motivations are a bit.
That's a North Mississippi version.
Are a bit more complex than that. But ultimately, it does. If you want to pare it down, yeah, it's incentives and consistency. People want to know that if I do well, then I get this. This is what happens. Yeah. If I do poorly, this is what happens. But if it's inconsistent, like it's like one day you're mad at me and for doing this thing, the next day it's okay, then you aren't gonna get that consistent participation from your team or your dog.
But you had to bring America up into this, didn't you?
That's
our dog.
America.
So I'm not bashing on it. Like, I have absolutely no one in my mind whenever I say this, but I can imagine company leaders who whip their dogs and don't whip their dogs.
Yeah.
Like that sounded really bad, I feel like, but like there's company leaders who do speak up and say, hey, this isn't our standard here. This is not the way we do business.
Yeah.
There's those guys, and then there's guys that they either don't speak up because they're shy-ish or whatever.
Don't like confrontation.
Don't like confrontation, or they think it's going to fix itself.
Exactly right. But it doesn't.
It doesn't.
It doesn't. In
it
fact,
does
it almost always gets worse.
Exactly. You're exactly right. So I'm sure you see that all the time.
All the time.
Is there a telltale sign like this is that guy? Like this is the guy that is gonna fix it, or this is the guy that ain't gonna fix it?
Yeah. Well, again, the culture which you're in does govern your behavior, but you want to give people opportunity, and so things that had worked the paradigm shifts is what you're looking for, and it's huge. There was a time in this world when people thought the human body was not capable of running a sub 4-minute mile. That they bipedal motion just couldn't do it, and so our joints couldn't work it until
couldn't do what?
Couldn't run a mile or run a mile in less than 4 minutes. And because the scientists were saying, look at this graph.
Damn, that's fast.
Can't do it until we did it. Until the Canadian did it, and then suddenly. 2 more the same year because the paradigm was broken. And so when people often there's a barrier in our minds that this thing is impossible, that someone told us it's impossible, so it's just not going to happen. But once one person does it, once the paradigm is shifted, then the floodgates break through.
Well, it's seeing that as possible, like you said.
Exactly right. And it happens so much. There was a theory of how germs were spread called the miasma theory. And doctors would thought that there was this bad air, and so you have to go out to the countryside to get to convalesce, to heal, to get some good fresh air out of the city. We now know that germ theory, that there's pathogens that are too small to see, that make us sick. But doctors, it took 37 years from when this was presented to the doctor community to become practice in the medical community. And so for 37 years, doctors would not wash their hands when they're doing surgery because how dare you tell me that I make my patients sick?
And that's the ego.
Yeah, and so,
get rid of that.
And so that paradigm shift, it being slow to move, costs us hundreds of thousands of people. You'd have right now, as you sit, you would have more cousins right now, if doctors had more swift to
wash their hands.
Yeah, from 37 years is a long time. 37 years.
That's a long time.
Yeah, and so and they willfully ignored it. But once it broke, all of a sudden huge shift, right? The paradigm shift. And so when we're in a business, and a person is behaving in a way that is we'll say suboptimal. Uh, if you can break that paradigm shift, then suddenly the person who was being the biggest detractor and the biggest difficulty in the organization may become the star person. Right? I've seen it dozens of times.
Can you give an example of that?
Oh yes. I was at a place where there's this machine. My client was about 40 years my senior, and he was an operations guy, and he loved being out with his guys. The machine they had would take bricks, and they would lay them on top of them, and it would make a sidewalk like automatically. It was pretty amazing. And so I got in there with him, and it was all loud and bricky. And he said, son, I've been doing this thing 30 years, but what can you teach me about my business? And I said, well, I don't know if it's the front or the back of this thing that I'm on, but I do know that we're behind schedule. And so how can we get across that bridge there? And it was gruff. I said, listen, sir, I'm going to use his name here. What would happen in this business? You would say that the thing is not possible. You think, wow, we can't do that. It'd be great, but we can't do it. And he told me, and I said, okay, so if I do that, you're on board. He said, yeah. We shook on it. Went out, got it done in 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Yeah. Came back to him, was like, so we're good. And then I couldn't. Then he became like my cheerleader, wherever I went. He was like behind me.
Now we're slick.
Yeah. Yelling about we got to do more. We got to do all this. And so it wasn't for personal accolades, but it was because people don't know what the top is. They don't realize what they can achieve. And that's the thing that's in me that drives me to do this work. Cause I can see a person and they're limiting themselves, and it drives me nuts.
Do you feel like that maybe that people get so involved in their day-to-day? They get so dialed in to like what they're doing. They're focused on that. That's where they're scared. If I can't get this done, then like I said, all their focus is there. Does that take their attention off other possibilities?
It does. I mean, idle time, it's precious, and we don't have enough of it. I always say that I'd be a billionaire if I spent all my time in the shower. That's where my best thoughts are.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right.
Hey, they do make waterproof notepads now. They sell them at Academy, right where you check out.
Yeah.
It's waterproof. You can use a Sharpie on it.
That's hilarious.
It's just there's so much to do, and there's just so many things that are buried on our time these days. And even with the best of intentions, that everyone's to-do list is never ending. It's never ending, and I've never got to the bottom of mine, and that's true of all of us. And
I'd be scared to know what I would do if I did get to the bottom of mine.
Yeah, and it used to be like we used to vet hook like the Jetsons. He used in that show. He worked 3 hours a day. He said these 3 hours workers are killing me. I'm working overtime, working 3 hours a day. We thought that in the future we were 2 hours a day max. The rest of the time we were lounging with our robots. But that's where we find ourselves. We find ourselves more taxed for our time. In fact, the scarcity of used to be knowledge. There was a time to where you would have before the internet, you'd be sitting down on the couch like, you know what, I want to learn more about this topic. And you're like, oh, well, too bad, because you can't. There's no information to have. But now, as we sit, information is no longer scarce. In fact, it is abundant. In the time we listen to this podcast, in this hour, there will be more video uploaded to YouTube than you can watch in your lifetime.
What?
There will in one hour, it's like 89 years worth of video uploaded to YouTube. That's straight, no bathroom breaks. That's how long it takes. Yes, and so that the scarcity now is time. It's no longer information, is now time. And so competing for eyeballs online, competing for listservs that come out, competing for taking care of the kids, taking care of everything else. There's not enough time, and so it's difficult to, even as a business owner and leader, to sit and consider and strategize, and then actually have a plan that you can execute between you and your team to move the needle in a meaningful way.
So I feel like COVID maybe definitely helped people to slow down a little bit. So how did COVID affect your business and give you more time to do the things that you want to do, need to do?
Yeah, that's a great question. It was an interesting time with COVID. I mean, we're now at a point where we can look back and reflect a little bit, which is great. Which is great response.
We're coming out of it.
The medical community to develop a sort of solutions to our troubles there, and when COVID happened, there's no precedent for it. This is a time no one has lived through this, or very few people lived through this, unless you're alive in 1918. No one had lived through
like the Renaissance period.
something like this. And so my clients were on the one hand saying, Leo, we need you right now because I don't know what's going to happen. It's all crazy. And then on the other side, my firm was like, listen, my firm is led by a person who will not risk his people for $1. And so he was very adamant that I will not put my people in harm's way. So again, this is back in the very unsure times, didn't know what was up and down. And so we weren't able to go and be with our clients as in their time of need. So we were able to develop a remote work structure that was effective. Well, we were able to really connect with them as we all were learning remote work in that time. And so it was a time like everyone else, was trying to keep the dog quiet and have the kids, run around the house. As our clients had real needs, some clients were on the verge of collapse, and we were able to save some businesses, save some families. Some clients were on the verge of declining on the way to their own success because their business was such that their volume tripled because they were distributing, and so they had no plan to take on this much volume, and so they were either going to fail and not meet their quality standard, and people would go elsewhere, or they were going to do something, had to figure out how to scale quickly and effectively. And so those are sort of the main two camps of need that was able to work through COVID.
So talking about COVID, whenever I think of COVID, that's just my mindset. As soon as I heard about it, it hadn't even hit America yet. It was still in China. Probably like March 2020, I guess, something like that.
Yeah.
I'm kind of thinking back, like what job site I was on at the time. But so my first thought, I was like, all right, whenever it was evident that, all right, it's coming to America, it's not going to stay in China forever, like COVID is about to affect us, my brain went straight to like what stock's about to take off, or how can I use this as an advantage? Like how can I don't know, how can I hedge this deal? And so do you see any room for growth or to hedge the deal coming out of COVID?
I do, for sure. And so, I mean, there's different striations, and COVID has affected everyone in a real way. And I'm very pleased to see us now on the mend, really truly recovering. Some of us weren't able to think of how we could. People's lives weren't secure enough to see anything but their own danger, in a COVID environment. But with the government support and states stepping up, and as well as the communities reaching out to their own, we've been able to come through it for the most part, living up to the American ideal.
I feel like a positive way.
Yeah, I do. I mean, it was.
If it was a terrible thing, at least we came together. You know what I'm saying?
We did. I mean, there was a large loss of life. 600,000 people is a lot of people.
It's terrible.
But now that we're on the far side of it, we hope, it is a place where people have to truly assess where they are from a business owner standpoint relative to the market, because there's some organizations that didn't make it. Some places, right, they're no longer with us, and it leaves a vacuum in your competitive sphere. And even when that isn't the case, there are if you didn't make it through COVID, I mean, if you're in a business who remained open and are ready to rebound, it's looking at the landscape now. You got to really observe it, because too often business owners are eager when they should be cautious, and are cautious when they should be eager. And being able to know where you can.
I'm sorry. That was so loud. I'm so sorry. I'm embarrassed.
No, you got that. No, you're a little parched. I can tell your
I was
voice.
trying to get that. I was trying to get the.
No, the last of the ice. You gotta let that ice go. It's no, but it's key. So that was where I think you should have been cautious. Where you should have been eager.
I was very eager.
Where you should have been cautious, right?
That's funny.
Case in point.
There you go. And so, but that's a hard call to make as a business owner, and not often it's difficult to sort of get that, to see it, to really see it from a wide perspective, and to see deeply within your own industry and organization. But you need it, because without that insight, you aren't able to make the decisions that really set yourself up to come out of COVID with the best foot forward. To really take what you have and offer it to those who need it, and oftentimes, particularly now in this COVID environment, you have new customers that you didn't realize you had, because people now have come out of this with a different sort of sense of self, and they have different. Our people's time value equation has shifted some.
That's kind of how FL Crane was, like the prefab deal. We were so lucky. We had started at the right time, and about the time we got it figured out, COVID. We can't have guys on jobs. We prefab it.
Yeah.
Exactly what you were saying. Like, people can build off this.
You can, and so that's the strength of America. Is to there's never been a time where it's been it's easy and perfect.
Yeah, right.
That does
not exist.
Never been true. And so in the difficult situation we find ourselves now, how are we going to come together? How are we going to look at it honestly, but with hope in our hearts? That will be how do you make it real in our business, in our communities? And so that's what should be on every business owner's mind right now. How do I re-engage my customers? How do I find new customers? How do I become have deeper partnerships with my frenemies in the industry, so that we can build a stronger and a tighter bond that will help one another out.
As a positive.
Exactly right. Because there's, this is the lot we have, and if everyone could snap a finger, you would change it, but you can't. So it's because there's opportunity abounds everywhere.
I don't want to sound like a punk, but I mean, you got winners, you got losers.
Yeah. there are those who win and those who lose.
There are those who win and those who lose.
Yeah.
And those who win kind of seem to, keep winning. Like, it's a mentality.
Yeah.
Take the negative, turn it into a positive. Don't be a victim, be a winner.
It is true. It's a mentality. It is a mentality. I definitely agree with that. That is often born with having the sort of the time to reflect and to nurture that mentality. I think to the extent we're all sort of born with it, but sometimes too often it's snuffed out early in people's lives with hardships or with just challenges they're too difficult to overcome with the hand that they're dealt. But if you're a person who average life, in this country, yeah, and or
blessed,
or blessed in this world, then you can sort of take charge of your own fate by by having that and nurturing that mentality.
Time to reflect. So, do you have like a certain time each day set aside to like just sit there and think about everything that went on today?
Oh yes.